Rodney. Let's go and see him. So today, looks like we've got Rodney coming to see us from Elders. So let's see what he's got to say. How you going, Rodney?
G'day Mitchell, how are you today?
Good.
Another day in paradise on the farm.
Yep, absolutely.
Great stuff.
So, I'd love to shake your hand, but I'm not allowed to.
We're not.
COVID-19.
What's on the go today?
Oh, just up here checking out the eggplants. So Elders is a major business that supports us on the farm. They do a lot of agronomy for us. They supply a lot of the products that we require to do the farming. But most of all, like we've been through some difficult times with viruses and that, Elders have been here to really support us through that difficult time and seen us come through. So this relationship's like a partnership, really, isn't it?
It really is, Mitchell. It started at a very small beginning and it's grown into a terrific relationship, and we've seen this farm really go ahead and really start to produce some of the wonderful fruit and vegetables that we know you're capable of doing, Mitchell.
Yeah, that's good. So today I thought we'd have a yak about the different phases of a plant. So when we're growing vegetables, there's some clear different phases of growth for a plant. What are they?
That's right. So really, as from germination to seedling establishment, we go through the vegetative phase and then further on to fruit production. But there's a number of nutritional things which have to change during that process because the plants have different requirements from the beginning until the end. So farmers like you have to understand how to change those nutritional requirements to match the requirements of the plants.
So you're saying that each different stage requires different fertigation?
That's correct. So if we start at the very beginning, we've got what we call the structural nutrients. The structural nutrients are basically carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Now, the plant gets those through carbon dioxide in the air and through H2O in the water. And most people probably don't know, Mitchell, that over 90% of all the dry matter in vegetables is actually those three elements, carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. So when we first plant a seedling or a seed, we require water to germinate the seed, or we require a fertigation to allow the plant to establish its root system.
So what would we do at that phase? Like, what are the key elements in our fertigation that we'd be looking at that root development stage?
At that early root development stage, we'll be looking for the plant to be able to access the fertilizer. So because the root system is small when it's first planted, it's up to the farmer to place the fertilizer in reasonably close proximity, so as the roots begin to grow and develop, they can explore those nutrients. So what they'll be looking for initially is the three big ones which we call the macronutrients. That's nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. And those three elements are crucial to the development of the new seedling and its establishment.
So once we've got the seedling going and then you can see that that's all happening, we call that, we set the seedling. So we put the plant in the ground, we let it sit for about a week so it sets, and we don't see much on top, but that's the roots coming out of the little cell and establishing around the drip tape.
That's correct.
Then once that's occurred, what's happening in the plant at that point?
The plant then goes into its vegetative phase when it really requires nutrition in a big way. So nitrogen is crucial for the formation of chlorophyll, which is the green colour you'll see in most vegetables and most plants.
Righto, so all this,
the green that we can see is the pigment chlorophyll, and
yep.
Chlorophyll plays an integral part in photosynthesis, which is the way that plants create sugars and starches from sunlight. So chlorophyll and hence nitrogen is really important in this vegetative stage when the plant is really looking to grow and grow quite quickly. Phosphorus is the next one. It's extremely important for cell division because it's a very important part of DNA and RNA, and that's what drives the cell division. So we need phosphorus in big amounts, and then potassium, which is the other of the three macro elements, is required to make the plant, give the plant the ability to control water. And water is so important in all plants, so it instructs the plant how to use water. It makes it drought resistant in cases if water gets dry. So those three macronutrients are very important.
So that would go from the setting stage to the stage where we're developing and growing the plant, so the structure's there, which they call the vegetative state. And then the next phase is?
The next phase is when we start to look at the development flowering parts, so flowering, and then onto fruit sets. So that's when the other nutrients, micronutrients in particular, come into play. There's three other secondary nutrients we haven't talked about, which are also important, and that's calcium, sulfur, and magnesium. Now those three plants are required in smaller amounts to nitrogen, but are still very important for the integrity of the cells in plants, and it allows them to take water in and out of the cells effectively. So then the other micronutrients really come into play. As we approach flowering, it becomes really important that we have some of the trace elements including boron, copper, zinc, iron. All these micronutrients have a very important part to play in the establishment of the flower. And boron is the one which allows the pollen to set and gives it the ability to be effective and to work well, so that when the bees come along, we get pollinated flowers.
Yep. So that's where these eggplants are at the moment.
That's where they are at the moment.
So we've got it
flowering away, and they'll be looking for all those trace elements in the fertiliser that you've provided in that basal fertiliser dressing.
Yep. And we're injecting through the
tape.
Through the tape, yeah. So once we've got fruit set, then what is required?
The big nutrients that are required once we've got the fruit set, if we want to grow the fruit as big and as large and as colourful as we can, and that's where potassium has got such a big part to play. Potassium allows the fruit to really expand quite quickly, and it gives us the colours that we see in the watermelons and in the eggplants. A lot of that comes from potassium, so extremely important that farmers monitor those three big nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, really right through the growing cycle. But when we come to growing fruit and enlarging it and getting it ready for market, we've got those three big ones, and then we've got also in the background calcium, because calcium gives shelf life and strength to the outside of the fruit, which is what people in the supermarkets really want.
Yeah, and it also gives strength to the actual cell. Every cell is strengthened by the calcium outside of the cell, which relates in a really strong piece of fruit. If I want to put flavour in my product, so I know with my mangoes we grow for flavour, what part of the nutrition is giving us the flavour? Well,
really the flavour comes from the photosynthesis, because it creates the sugars in the plant. Yep. So that goes back to that initial three, those structural products. To get sugar, we must have sunlight, carbon dioxide and water. So it sounds pretty basic, but ultimately that's what makes the fruit sweet.
Yep. And our mangoes are sweet.
And your mangoes are the sweetest in the territory.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear from my elders rep. So, no, that's exciting, Rodney. So we're injecting fertiliser. We're going to do that in the garden next episode. We're injecting fertiliser. What sort of fertiliser can we inject? Can we just go and buy an NPK fertiliser from elders like nitrophosphor and put it in water and inject that?
So if we're going to add nutrients to the plants through the drip tape, we need to buy soluble fertilisers that will go through the drip tape and provide the nutrients in a form which is readily available to the plants.
All right. And soluble means?
It dissolves in water.
That's that simple.
Exactly.
So the nitrophosphate that we put in the base has got gypsum and carriers in it, so that will not dissolve in water.
That's correct. It doesn't dissolve in water. It needs to be broken down in the soil by the microfauna and flora in the soil. Yep. That's why they have such an important part to play in the whole development of the root system and the ability to take up nutrients.
All right, so we purchase a soluble fertiliser that we can then mix it in water, and it completely dissolves, 100%?
100% dissolves.
And then we can inject it through the drip tape or put it through the water.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's what we do. So is it a good idea just to give a great big chunk of that in one hit and then hope that it does it for the next 3 weeks?
No, not really, Mitchell.
No,
not
what happens?
Ideal at all. What we would like to do is to put small amounts through on a very regular basis, so the plants are constantly harvesting the nutrients as they need them, making sure we're providing enough of them, but not one big hit and then nothing for a week. Every day, every irrigation, putting through small amounts of nutrients.
Yeah. And that's also because we've got bacteria and microbes in the soil if we put a great big hit of fertiliser, you can actually kill those, and then we've got to wait for them to come back.
That's right.
To process that fertiliser. So we put little bits in, we don't burn our roots, and we don't kill all our goodies in the soil.
The soil obviously is so important in agriculture and farming, and farmers obviously have always had a huge responsibility to look after their asset.
Yep.
And the soils are all important, and we do everything we can to maintain their health.
Yeah, we do. So that's a really good overview of what we do here and how we manage our farm. So there's a few things that we can use to test what we've got in our plant. So as growers, we can look at a plant and go, oh, that's lacking nitrogen, or that's lacking potassium or phosphorus. But some of those other ones are a little bit tricky, aren't they? What do we do to work out exactly how much of those we've got in our plant so that we're ready for our flowering? Or
that's right. Experienced growers can look at leaves and look to see if there's toxicities or too much of an element, or not enough if they're deficient. But the way that they can back that up scientifically is to take what we call a sap test. So they'll go along and harvest the small petioles off the newest emerged leaf. We'll take them away, send them away, and bring them back in analysis within 24 hours. And then we can say, this is what we've found, Mitchell. These plants at this stage require copper, zinc, and molybdenum, and it's quite important we get them on quickly. So we'll put them through the drip tape with soluble fertiliser to carry those trace elements.
So hours can make a difference if you're deficient. So if you're deficient in your boron and stuff like that, and your magnesium and that, when the flowers are opening, that can make a real difference, just hours of not having that product.
Absolutely. If the plants are trying to flower and produce pollen and they're deficient in boron, then you'll end up with sterile pollen, most likely, poor flower, poor fruit set, and the whole process.
And we can't get it. And we have to get a commercial amount of fruit.
Right. That's right.
Otherwise it's not worth growing. So yeah, so there's a lot in this.
There's a lot in it, and farmers like yourself, you really need to be scientists and chemists and to do the job.
Or ask you to come and help.
Or ask someone from Elders to come and give you a hand, which has always been a pleasure.
Which we do. Even if we do know what we're doing, we still get you to come here and give us your opinion, so that it's not just our eyes looking at this stuff, we're actually testing. You come and do leaf analysis regularly, and you get it tested, and then we can look at what the statistics are on that, and we can stay on track.
That's right. And look, Mitchell, from my experience, and I've been an agronomist for over 30 years all over Australia with Elders, farmers really like a second opinion.
Absolutely.
That's one of our key roles as agronomists when we serve farmers and work alongside them, is just to get a second opinion. They don't always follow it. A lot of the times they don't. Often they will. It's just having something to discuss, sounding board, to make sure they're on track.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we have to get the right result.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't cost much to get someone to tell us what's going wrong.
No, that's exactly right.
It's nice when you say it looks good, though.
It looks particularly good today, Mitchell.
Yeah, that's good. All right, fantastic. Well, thanks for coming out today, Rodney.
It's a pleasure.
We'll get you back for King's Backyard Farming, and I'm sure we'll find some other things. I think the next one we're going to do with you is actually going around the mango orchard, selecting leaves for a leaf analysis, and then you can explain. We'll actually show our viewers how the leaf analysis comes back, and we can talk about each element and where it has to be and how we change it. That would be a good episode. So
really look forward to it, meeting you and Mr. Wolf again.
Yeah, good. Thanks for coming out.
Good on you. So now the interview's over, Mitchell. More importantly, you caught a fish lately?
I haven't. You're the one that goes fishing.
Yeah, well, I don't get too much time, you know. None of us Elders blokes get much of a chance to fish, but do sneak in the odd one on the weekend.
Yeah, and a bit of hunting.
Hello.
Yeah, you're a bit scared to talk about your hunting. On that side. That's it. Not squashing them. Oh!